Hello, how there? My name is Laolu Akonde, and you are on to Inside Sources. Here's my take for the week. Who will tell the president, part 4. Speaking in China a few days ago with Nigerians based in that country, after an official visit, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu said, and I quote him, "China is a very disciplined society, and we have to be disciplined too. Without discipline and commitment, we cannot build a nation that is respected everywhere in the world." End of quote. Now, these are very promising pronouncements by our president. But back here at home, Nigerians are very distressed with the hike in the pump price of petrol. So who will tell the president that the first thing on the way out of this national despondency is for him to take some radical decisions and state publicly some truths about the subsidy? Truth number 1, that the subsidy removed in May 2023 at its inauguration had to be partially restored few months after. And the reason that he had to do that was because the pump price went higher than anticipated. And the administration had to intervene to put a little succor for the people. Truth number 2, that even right now that the pump price is upward of 800 naira to 1,200 naira, depending on where you buy it, a liter, government is still providing a little subsidy. Truth number 3, that some form of manageable subsidy will have to remain because we just can't let this thing be entirely market-based. Our people cannot afford it, as simple as that. Who will tell the president that if it comes clean this way, there is a good chance that Nigerians can start to really listen to him and he can begin to build a trust with the people? Now, the drastic decision that he has to take. Who will tell the president that if he doesn't have the courage to stare the corruption in the oil and gas sector down, eyeball to eyeball, why is he talking to us about the discipline in China? Let's quote him again. I quote, "Without discipline, we cannot build a nation that is respected everywhere in the world." Unquote. Who will tell the president that the inefficiencies in the NNPC and the oil and gas sector amount to gross indiscipline? Who will tell the president that the entire nation is urgently waiting on him to discipline that sector, which is the commanding height of our economy? Without the president, once and for all, working to terminate the indiscipline, the corruption, and the inefficiencies in the NNPCL, the hardship the average Nigerian is undergoing will continue unabated and even worsen. And why should he, as president, tolerate such? Who will tell the president to remove subsidy is bold, but to discipline the sector and clean it up is the bolder decision that he has to take? Who will tell the president that if he delays to take the bolder decisions to fight corruption and indiscipline in the sector, the people who voted him into power will continue to carry the burden and suffer for a much longer time? But why should they suffer when there is a way out? Finally, who will tell the president that this idea of labeling some of the protesters in last month's End Bad Governance protest as terrorists and treason suspects is particularly worrying? Are there really serious and compelling evidence that these people being paraded, including the LNC president, have actually committed treasonable offenses? Will there be a diligent prosecution of the case along the lines of terrorism and treason? Who will tell the president that this idea is capable of rubbishing the credentials of Mr. President as a lifelong Democrat? Who will tell the president that wittingly or unwittingly, these developments altogether are signaling a legacy he certainly will not be proud of? Let us hope that someone will help us tell the president that as rough and as touchy as things are today in Nigeria, there are some Nigerians who still take him very seriously when he makes such remarks like he did in China recently, that, and I quote, "I am committed to providing leadership," unquote. It should not fail us. And there you have my take for the week. Inside Sources will be right back, and today we have 2 segments. Okay, welcome back to Inside Sources. Today I have another eminent Nigerian professor and politician who was the former Minister of Health between 2010 and 2014. He also ventured into politics. He ran for governorship of Ebonyi State in 2015. A professor of orthopedic surgery. I'd like to welcome to Inside Sources Professor Onyebuchi Chukwu. Prof, you're welcome to Inside Sources.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for coming. Right, so let's take it from the point of view of human capital development, which is your own area as an health expert. So if you look at where we are in terms of, how successive governments have taken the issue of human capital development, do you think that Nigeria is on course the way we manage human capital development? I just want to open that way, but...
We're not quite on course because if I say we're on course means there's nothing to worry about. There's a lot to be anxious about. There's a human capital development in Nigeria. And I think the major problem has been our inconsistency. And then second, the passion for politicians not to want to go into areas that are not appear tangible. And yet, human capital development is what a country needs to progress.
Clearly, so we've seen and this this debate around infrastructural development, focusing on health and education, is a very live one, and quite a few people say that the political leaders, in most cases the governors, when we're talking about health and education, that they focus more on infrastructure because, that is where a lot of procurement happens. In your view, what should be the priority, infrastructure or human capital development? What should be the absolute priority?
It's 50-50, but if the truth be told, we're not focusing on the right infrastructure because it's not concrete work that is infrastructure. Infrastructure are those things that are put in place to enable a system perform. And so building a road to where? So when a government is building a road, the question is, why is this road being built? If the government is putting up a building, what purpose would that building be? So unless you're integrating it with the developmental needs of a country or a state, you'll certainly be doing what you think is infrastructure, and yet you've not even started. Are we doing infrastructure? Where's the electricity in Nigeria? So if someone says we have been focusing on infrastructure, my first question, do we have electricity?
Very good point.
Do we have water? And yet, year in, year out, cholera ravages the whole country. Is it not a shame that after how many years after Nigeria became a country, more than 100 years, and even if you want to talk about independence, more than 60 years after independence, we still have this cholera ravaging. Anybody still having this regular cholera just means you are totally underdeveloped. So I would say 50-50, because the infrastructure, even to put up an infrastructure, you need the human capital development, those people who know what the infrastructure is needed and how to go about it, how to maintain that infrastructure. And then, of course, you need people to be alive to enjoy the so-called infrastructure. So I would say 50-50, but there's no doubt there's always that control. But I think at any particular point in time, one may be slightly more urgent in terms of demand than the other. At the moment. So it depends on the point you are referring to.
Okay. Yeah. So one of your somebody who was also a former minister on this show actually said that while he was minister, and I'd like to have your own experience, while he was minister, federal minister of health, he was traveling around the states and he found out that many governors were building, quote unquote, general hospitals, the buildings. But it turns out that in many of those cases, you have big buildings, fairly equipped, in many cases, poorly equipped, but in all cases, no doctors, not enough nurses. Was that your experience when you were also minister?
Well, to a large extent, in some states we are doing well, but I would say most of the states that I had the opportunity to visit. I couldn't visit all the 36 states, but I think during my time, I was able to go up to 30 states.
Okay.
And in many of these states, the problem has always been death of health care workers. And then the second thing is that there's no system. Because even if you provide the supply side, you have the buildings, you have the equipment, and even if you have the human resources, is the demand there? Why is the demand not there? Is it that the people are not aware? Is it that the people are not satisfied with what is being offered them? Or simply they can't just afford the costs of healthcare?
Okay.
So we need to build system. We haven't even built any system. So more or less, what you just have is concrete boxes. And then we just have a plug there, declare it commissioned. And of course, that is the beginning and also the end of the story, I will tell you.
And it's a very, it's a very compelling conversation that we do need to have around healthcare. I mean, you just pointed out to the fact that even up to now, we have not even beaten cholera. That cholera comes every year. You were the minister when we managed Ebola. I did an excellent job. Everybody knows that. Now we have Mpox. You just had cholera. I think the cholera stuff is still going on.
Still going on.
So in your own view, what else do we need to do? So what will be the problem? Why don't we have a system? Why are we still dealing with cholera on a yearly basis?
When I was minister, I used to say, I used to quip. I say, look, I'm Minister of Health, not Minister of Healthcare. So health is a broader concept than simply healthcare. I think we've overemphasized healthcare in Nigeria. Particularly the media too hasn't helped. Media is always talking about, cancer centers. They are very important. Talking about centers for cardiology, for orthopedic surgery and so on. They are all very important, but we miss the point. If we are talking about health, we should start from prevention. So what do we do to give our people good health? It starts from prevention. It starts from promotion. So what should we prevent? How do we go about preventing? There are diseases that are simple to prevent because all you need is to have a shot or a drop of vaccine.
Right.
So have we done well in this country for that? No. We've not done well in terms of the fact that we are importing all our required vaccines. Time was when Nigeria was producing half of the world's yellow fever vaccine, for instance. So why did we stop? What happened to that factory in Yaba? And what has happened to the effort we started making, even in my own time, to resuscitate that, but along with the private sector? What has happened? India produces more than 50% of the world's current
vaccines.
Yeah, vaccines.
Wow. So what happened?
If India is doing, why couldn't we do it?
So what happened? When you were minister, you said you tried to...
Yeah, before I came on board, before I came in, the Olusegun Obasanjo administration has started discussion with me and Baker.
Okay.
And they agreed to establish a joint venture called Biovaccines Nigeria Limited. And much of the federal government's equity was in form of the land in Yaba, which the government was concerned.
Right.
While me and Baker was bringing the other aspect.
Right.
Well, I think during the brief period of President Yar'Adua, for some reasons, it was put on hold, and that was it. But when I came on board, some of the ministry directors were among the files they gave to me and said, if I could resuscitate, that would be good. I studied them and found they were good. I consulted widely, and I was advised to first get in touch with the Attorney General because there were some legal issues that were being raised.
On the land?
Not only on the land, but on facilities and even the arrangement, the agreement.
Okay. Between the federal government and me and Baker?
Me and Baker. So I contacted my colleague who took time, in fact, a number of weeks to study it. That was Adoke, Mohamed Adoke.
Right.
And in the end, said that there were a few things we needed to do. Of course, time was of the essence. That agreement was almost terminated according to the number of years.
Wow.
So we needed a new agreement, but the original one provided for renegotiation. But it was a good program. And then most of the issue they were asking was about the valuation of the land. And instead they had used under Ambassador, they had used a private valuer. Now they say they would like the government itself to be the value. So I contacted my colleague in Ministry of Lands Housing, as it was then known, and they gave us, we paid for it, Ministry of Health paid, but they went ahead and valued it and gave us a report. So armed with that and the Attorney General's report, I then wrote to the President and make my case for it clearly And the president approved it that we should go ahead, but in conjunction with the Minister of Justice.
Okay.
So together with that, we re-invited, because by then, me and Baker had gone to court.
I imagine.
They had gone to court.
Oh, right. Okay.
Breach of contract. So we were able to persuade them, withdraw from the court case. They were happy to do that. And then together, we started. But I left before it was clear. But I was happy that during President Buhari's time, that matter was concluded. So there is Biovaccine Nigeria Limited. It's back on track. Okay. But again, after the initial enthusiasm, I think it has been...
So we do have the factory, as it were.
Yes.
But it's just not producing, it's not as productive as you would expect.
No. They've not been able to resume production.
And it's very important. But still, while we're still on issues of infectious diseases, so what do you think about this current mpox state? What threat is there? And what's your assessment of how it's being managed?
Well, the WHO says for countries like Nigeria, they consider what they called moderate threat. Moderate threat in the sense that we are not too near the epicenter, which is the Democratic Republic of Congo. But yet, because we travel a lot.
But we're on the same continent.
We're on the same continent. Nigerians travel. We do travel.
And people come here too.
And people come here. So because of that, there is a real threat to us. In any case, we recorded some cases. Mm-hmm. Even though those 40. Confirmed as of last week were just about 40 or thereabout. Yeah. The good thing this year, unlike 2 years ago, is that so far nobody has died in Nigeria. So which means there's a greater awareness. That is one. And two, we're responding faster. I think so far what the Nigerian authorities through the Nigeria Center for Disease Control is doing is good. What we need to do, because just like what happened to us during the Ebola time, we thought we were prepared, but when it landed, we were just not ready, is to heighten the awareness again, particularly at our ports of entry, air, sea, and land crossings. Even though, from what I know as a former minister, the land one is the most challenging. True. Because we have so many illegal land crossings. So it's the most challenging. But it's just for us to keep talking about it, keep talking to our health workers at every level, from primary care up to the tertiary care, that this thing exists. Continue to show the photographs of people, continue to let the public know what could make you suspect that someone has mpox. So that once someone has a case, we need to raise the index of suspicion. But otherwise, I think fairly what we put on ground is good enough.
Yeah, so I've always wanted to ask this question from some of the experts, So in 2020, we had this COVID, scare and real problem. We shut down the economy for, upwards of a couple months. Now, but when you look at it with the benefit of hindsight, the prevalent rate and, the fact that, how many people really died and stuff like that. Do you think that it was the right decision to actually shut down our economy for months? Did we really have to do that? I mean, hindsight now.
Well, with hindsight, I think we needed to do that because we didn't have enough to provide the coverage. If we had put a system in place that was adequate enough to reduce improve the surveillance, improve the ability to make a diagnosis or to suspect that this could be a case, then absolutely there was no need to do that. But the reason why that was done was, first, it was an evolving disease. We didn't quite understand what it was all about. There was a global hysteria. Yeah. And people ask me, how do you treat hysteria? Hysteria is to first remove what is causing people to have hysteria.
Yeah, to calm down.
So some of the things you do are a bit psychological. They're not real. For instance, when you say your temperature will be taken, it is purely as a way to assess fear. So it's more psychological than real, because many people did a lot of funny things. Even like they did during Ebola, people will go and take analgesics before they go to the airport. So even if they had fever, at that point, it will be suppressed. So there were issues. And of course, there are many things that can lead to fever. But those things at that particular time when you have mass hysteria, because, one thing about human beings, it's easier to look at things with hindsight. For instance, someone will now find a couple in their 60s or 70s, all alone, living in a house with many rooms. And you're saying, was it what they were building? But you forgot that at a particular point in time for the couple, they actually needed those rooms.
Yeah, true.
So my question to answer that question is to go back at that time again, recreate that time and say, with what was going on, I think it was good to do that for the government.
And the reason, thank you.
But in reality, if we removed the hysteria, there may not have been any. Coupled with the fact that we were not too sure of put in place what to use in monitoring. And
you spoke as an expert. I'm just speaking as a journalist.
No. Even at that time, I remember even within the social media, the present governor of Anambra, he's an economist, Professor Soludo,
right.
Actually put up something where he was going along your lines that maybe we're hitting this with a sledgehammer. Because, yes, it's important to save lives, but what about livelihood? And I remember I also wrote something that circulated widely then in the kind of also urging that we shouldn't just look at it purely as an economic issue. Because both of them are intertwined. Yes. So we look at it at first addressing an immediate need, and then
interesting. Let's move to politics. Of course, you ran for governor in 2015, and now you're also a member of the Ohaneze Restructuring Committee. So let's talk a bit of politics, and let me just ask you. So. What is the idea behind, and I'm not, because I just want you to talk about it, Ohaneze setting up its own restructuring committee, and what is the kind of postulation that you imagine we should be talking about, in this country at this time, around restructuring?
Well, Ohaneze, even though it is non-partisan, but it's a developmental, socio-economic, political group.
Right.
Dedicated to the welfare of Ndigbo, people who have the Igbo ethnic stock. And is one of the major ethnic groups in Nigeria.
Yeah.
And therefore, there's no doubt there's a problem with the setup we have.
I agree.
We don't know whether we are running a federation or not. It's difficult to define what we are running. In some aspects, largely, we're actually unitary with some sub-national administrative units. In some aspects, we actually try to see whether we can pretend really to be a federation. But we are less a federation today than we were soon after independence. There's no doubt about that. So because now the talks have resumed again about whether we need to tweak something in our constitutional arrangement to give more powers to the federating units. Even now, I don't even know which one is it the local governments or the states that are federating units?
States.
So there's a lot of confusion. But the truth is that we all generally, if we are being honest, there's need to look at what the system we are running. And so that made Ohaneze also as an interested party to say, we don't need to wait. Why don't we also have a committee, come up with something we can look at plenary and also submit to the appropriate bodies as our own thoughts.
To engage,
Actually, what, from the point of view of Ndigbo, what will be something that will help them.
But so, Prof, in your own view now, personally, you've been in government, you're in politics, you're also a professor. What do you think is the high mark of restructuring? I mean, if there's one or two things that you think ought to change, and the goal is national development, in your own view.
Number one, the greatest problem today in Nigeria, the way it is security. We're also insecure now. Nobody is safe. So what do we need to change that will improve security? I thought at a particular time the federal government was like, we may go with state police.
State police,
I'm for it. I've been screaming about it. I mean, we should not be afraid. We should not be afraid. The way, Newton's law said, the first Newton's law said, unless you move us, we'll stay where we are.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So that has governed human beings generally. In every aspect, you will see that first Newton's law. Remember, even before we started talking about the cashless economy and so on, remember now Eme, the then governor of Central Bank, was invited to all kinds of places to explain this idea that he wants everything done with
society,
But today, what's happening?
We are really...
We're almost there. Even the smallest retailers will bring out something and say, yes.
You have POS.
If you doesn't have the neighbor has POS.
Yeah.
It seems normal now. But I could imagine that the people who were Nigeria were not yet trying for it. So it's the same thing with this state police. There's no other way. What we have centrally has been overwhelmed. And in any case, security needs a lot of local intelligence, and only the people themselves that can police their area. So it's not even a matter for discussion. It's just what we need to do. So that's one area, if you ask me.
That is quite. But what do you then think about the fears that have been expressed that, look, we have a lot of governors these days that are behaving like emperors,
Hasn't the federal government to be using police? I mean, if you want to talk about abuse, anything can be abused, just like medication. One of the medications, I'm a doctor, but one of the medications that have been so thoroughly abused is tramadol. Will I now say because tramadol has been abused, we should no longer use it in hospitals?
Withdraw it.
No. Even in the communication system, the same ICT weapon we use is what criminals use.
True.
The same mobile phones.
So we should work around how to ensure it's not abused.
Everything is always a two-sided coin. Everything in life always advantage. What you ask yourself at that particular time, which one will be of use to you? If the useful aspects are more useful, then you now begin to think of how to mitigate the effects of the adverse effects. Yeah.
Interesting. Just because of our time, I would like to also ask you maybe the last question. What is your assessment of the state of the nation? There's a lot of worry in the land. We just have a series of protests. There are even people saying that, okay, in October, they're going to resume. How will you assess, like a professor, you're a former minister, how will you assess the state of the nation? Where do you think we are?
Well, actually, people like me find it difficult. Why? Because presently, I'm in APC. I've been in APC since 2016. And at the national level, APC is in charge. Yeah. So people will say, you see you now. So it's been a problem. But if the truth be said, as of now, I don't think we're doing the right thing. I don't think so. It's easy to, even as a doctor, if someone has a similarly intractable problem, yes, you give hope to the person, but you must solve the pain. Someone is in pain, and you are saying, don't worry, in 3 months' time, that patient will leave you. Are you crazy as a doctor? So, as a doctor, I know there are immediate things that need to be done, medium-term things, and then the long-term. But always, the immediate thing must be solved. They're not too excited. Right now, people are suffering.
Yeah. And it seems that the main cause of this suffering, is the removal of the subsidy. Now, but like people say, if you go back to the campaign, all the presidential candidates, the major ones said that we have to remove subsidy, but it is the removal of subsidy that got us here.
I think we cannot just withdraw subsidy completely. I think no matter how we look at it, it can never, even now, there's still subsidy anyway. There's still subsidy. The truth is the major thing that brings us revenue is with the oil and gas sector.
Yeah.
And therefore, the government, if that's the only thing the president does, is go there. Yeah, it's okay to say the president is a minister, but you need to have you must know everything thoroughly. It's one place that we've not gotten right, and I don't see what is there. It's one place our leaders need to exercise that selflessness. Right now, the whole oil and gas sector is so very opaque in terms of what is going on. Totally opaque. It shouldn't be so.
I agree with you entirely, Prof. In fact,
it shouldn't be so.
Yeah. I have even said on this program that, look, the president did a thorough investigation of CBN, and we saw the rot. And that he should also do the same thing.
The same thing and follow up with action.
Gas sector,
If we get the oil sector, we know where the problem is. We know. Apart from the fact that we don't even know how much we're exporting. Secondly, it's being stolen by people in government.
Serious
and their associates. Because nobody can bring, like P2B will tell you, nobody can bring those kind of oil tankers. No poor man can afford to bring it in. And it's not something you bring in and nobody, because if we now say that those oil tankers come and our security agencies don't know about it, then there's no security in Nigeria then. That means any country can take over the government even.
True.
So those is not possible. So we know. But there's something missing. We are not taking action.
Yeah.
Well, it's simple. We're not taking action.
Very
Once we get the oil and gas sector right, there's no way we'll not give to some subsidy. It is not possible. Right. And once we do that, the Naira we appreciate naturally.
I believe so.
It's something that I think we know where the problem is, but we're not doing what we should do. It's as simple as that.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Prof. And I agree with you very well. And I'm happy that you've also added your voice to the fact that we need to fix the oil and gas sector. It's so critical to our economy. Thank you for coming to Inside
Thank you so
Sources.
much.
And thank you for your service, while you were minister. And thank you for continuing to engage on the issues. We believe that once we don't relent, we will get the Nigeria of our dreams.
We will. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Inside Sources will be right back. Welcome back to Inside Sources. Today we have a panel discussion on the state of the nation, specifically looking at the political dimension and the economic dimension, and how both of those interrelate. To join me in this conversation, I have two eminent Nigerian public intellectuals and professionals. Joining us virtually, I have Dr. Marcel Mbamalu, who is the publisher and editor-in-chief of Prime Business Africa. And here in the studio, I have Mr. Fahad Garba Aliyu, who is the managing partner of Ignite Capital. So I'm going to start from the studio. Mr. Fahad, welcome to Inside Sources.
Thank you so much for having me, Mr. Kande.
The situation of the country economically clearly is a bit of a challenge for many of our people. And both government and people, we all agree that there is hardship in the land. Now, my opening question to you is, what are the commanding factors that is responsible for where we are? And then we talk about how we can get out of it. So if there are one or two critical reasons why the situation is where it is, can you, educate Nigerians on that?
Okay. Thank you so much for having me. I think, to be fair to this present administration, there is we can't really the economy is really bad. But to be fair to this economy, to this present administration, this is a problem that we should have addressed over successive governments that we've been kicking down the road. But unfortunately, we are at a point now where we have to deal with this. I think since from May 29th, the president making certain announcements without having a proper plan for it has really put us on this, unfortunate situation. And I think from economic point of view, market wants stability. As long as there is no stability, really, there is going to be chaos. So it's very unfortunate, but I think the state of the nation is a bit chaotic, to say the least. And the government talks a lot about reform. But really, I've asked a few people I know, what are actually these reforms that we are embarking on, so that we know where we are going. And I think even the government have not really done a really good job in explaining what are these reforms, right? So a lot of people say that we should be patient, things will get better, but what are we patient about? What are we patient about, right? If it is you can't have a stable economy when, we have unfortunately, the insecurity, which didn't start from this government, but what are we doing to address it, right? And then from a fiscal point of view, monetary point of view, but it seems our approach is more like fire brigade approach. Something comes up, then we try to just patch it. But I think if the government will have a very coherent vision, a clear path and steps with the right people, I think Nigerians will be a bit more understanding as we address these challenges, because we all know the economy handed over on May 29 was not an excellent economy. But unfortunately, Nigerians will always remember, okay, May 29 to date, what was the dollar rate, right? How much are we buying rice? How much are we buying? Perception is one's reality.
Yeah, and there's a stark difference between where we were before May 29 and where we are today.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that opening comments. Let's take it to Dr. Mbamalu. So because of the situation economically, we've had this end bad government protest, last month, and quite a bit of dissent in the country. Now, you're a journalist, Dr. Mbamalu. How will you describe the way the government has managed the fallout of the economic problems that led to those protests and the fallout of the protest itself. How will you describe all of that?
Okay, thank you, Lalu, for having me. Well, I think where we are today, it didn't come all of a sudden. I think because we failed to plan, we actually plan to fail. I would tell you that hardship and nation's economic status is more or less dependent on the currency level, the integrity of its currency, the strength of its currency. I know that the former administration of President Muhammadu Buhari didn't do much in terms of controlling the exchange rate. But it got worse, probably when the new administration came on board, probably because I think a lot of steps, hurried steps we are taking, including the floating of the Naira. However good it might sound at that point, when you don't match that with productivity, what you are going to get is skyrocketing inflation. And that's why we are where we are today. So, of course, with that happening and with a little or virtually no controls, in place to contain our foreign exchange situation as a country, and with low productivity, almost non-existent, especially in critical sectors, of course, it was a given that hardship will come. And hardship, of course, was the bedrock of the end bad governance protest. You will agree with me that, of course, we've been experiencing exchange rate crisis ever since 2023. It was there before 2023, but it's not in this dimension that we're experiencing them now. The Central Bank of Nigeria announced unification of the Naira exchange rates just last month, which is a major step towards addressing the issue. But as I said earlier, if you don't match it with production, you are still going to get crisis in your hand. So now, of course, that protest you could see, end bad governance protest was orchestrated and announced. But like I said to one of my friends when this was about to happen, I asked, how do you want a protest? And you give a notice, a protest that you want to make that level of statement with. And then you give a notice and all of those in a political situation as we have in the country. Of course, you don't expect government and others to put their hands, and allow it to succeed. And of course, what I expected government to do, although the interventions I saw, I don't know, of course, you cannot say exactly that this is from government, but of course there were counter efforts to counter those protests. But what I expected government to do was to actually listen and negotiate and dialogue and ensure that because we are in a democratic government, a democratic government, we expect government to dialogue and get those demands. At least some of them met. But I can tell you that weeks after that protest, none of those demands you would say are seen to have been met. Efforts, of course, there is almost zero communication of the efforts being made to meet those demands. And to me, that's where the problem is. I think that, and to be fair to this government, you would not say that this government originated this problem that we have right now, but I can say that inaction or over-politicization of the actions being taken to address the inherited problems actually wasn't them. I think that at the moment, we are doing more politics than governance. And I must tell you, that's my opinion. And I must tell you that the actions that we are taking right now are leading us even more and more to crisis. And my advice to government would be to to really listen and act more in line with what the people want. That, to me, that will be my opening statement on this. So end bad governance protest, not successful. Obviously, not well organized. Government, they do well in containing it. I would say no. But Nigeria, as you know, how we are as Nigerians, our convictions, our passion for change, to get our government to do the right things, it has a kind of limited lifespan, and that's the problem. So I think that it was not well done, but that was enough to make a listening government become better. Whether that will happen, time will tell.
Okay, thank you, Marcel. Let's bring it back to Fahad. So let's take an attitude of trying to now look at the solutions. What are the options that exist? We have described what the circumstances are. Everybody understands there's a lot of hardship. There are tough decisions that have been taken. You raised the issue of, not properly considered. Going forward now, how do we get out of this? And I want you to pay attention to what ought to be, in your view, the immediate and short-term measures that can bring relief to the people. Fine.
Okay. So I think empowering the private sector to really create the jobs needed and giving incentives is like, literally, we just ended the end bad governance protests, and already they are talking about increasing VAT, right? So it's like you are trying to add more hardship, right, on the Nigerian people.
But don't you think, I'm sorry for interrupting, don't you think that our tax to GDP ratio in Nigeria is ridiculously low?
It is low, but improve productivity first, because right now with the hardship the country is going, is not a time to tax people more, because already people are really struggling, right? So how do you add productivity into the economy? And I think, just for example now, right, Nexim Bank still doesn't have a board. This is almost 16 to 17 months into the new administration.
And Nexim Bank is the Nigerian Export and Import
Bank, right? That the management cannot approve a facility of over ₦1 billion, right? So the companies that need a lot of these facilities, they've done everything. They are waiting for the board to be approved before they can access this facility that will make the economy better. But 16 months down the road, we still don't have a board yet. So it's very hard to, there's simple steps like this, right, will make some part of the economy better. And because even though we live in a federation, but the president has tremendous power. When he outlines a vision with clear direction and channel resources towards those goals, Nigerians will come, because people that criticize and whatever, we all love the country. Nobody wants the country to not do well. So for me, I think lack of direction from the government is one. Appointing a board, something as simple as Nexim board helps. There's a lot of multinationals have been leaving, but it doesn't really tell the clear picture if we're trying to be fair, to the government. When Kimberly Clark, said they are leaving, Wemi Industries, I know a friend that invested, they said they are benefiting from that exit. So because we have local alternatives that are filling those gaps and doing really, really,
So it's not such a bad thing that they're leaving.
There is more to it than just saying a multinational has left. Diageo left, 58% of their shares of Guinness Nigeria, but Tolaram came, and
pick it up.
Exactly. So there is a bit more nuance, to this, but clear direction from a government. The president said, "I asked for the job. Don't pity me." Right. But unfortunately, I think the actions of the government and just these basic steps, like people are struggling. You are seeing people in government buying latest SUVs, right? So perception matters. Perception matters. There are people that are really working in different sectors that are doing well, that can do better, but they are succeeding in spite of government, not because of government. So clear fiscal policy, right? So, but unfortunately, it seems government is just who you know, and no sense of purpose or direction. But there's a lot of private sector players. Now, okay, just if you look at it, what direction is the government trying to help in the private sector, for example? We have no idea. Literally, we have no idea, right? Buhari, let's say, tried to do, make us rice sufficient food security. Even though we did not achieve that, but at least you could say there was a direction. But for this government, I've asked a few people I know in the government, really, nobody has been able to clearly define what is the government trying to do. And I think if we know, and another simple example that I will give you, right? This tax committee that the president formed.
Yes,
the presidential, yes. They were doing their job. They did not know. All of a sudden, it was announced the cybersecurity levy, right, was announced. So if you have formed a committee to look at all the levies and taxes of the country to come up with a market-driven policy, and then, you just announced cybersecurity levy. So that means their job really is just for show, right? Is not really, because if you wanted to increase a levy you should have, handed it over to them, let them do an advice so that it can be part of a holistic framework, right, or policy. So I think this mixed signals from government doesn't really have anybody.
Well, the good thing in that case, the so-called levy, I think, was withdrawn.
Yes, exactly. Exactly, was withdrawn.
All right. Yeah. Let's come to Dr. Mbamalu. So in your view, same question, what are the immediate to short-term measures that government ought to adopt going forward that can help us to ameliorate the hardship and begin to take care of this situation? Marcel?
Simple steps. Thank you, Lalu. Simple steps. First, make governance cheap. Reduce the perks of office for government officials, for those appointees. Look at the National Assembly, cut costs of governance. Look at the amount that's spent in running the National Assembly. Show that you are ready. Communicate your readiness, your preparedness as government to cut costs. People read body language more than words, than talk. That's the first step. 2, if I have the privilege, if I am the president today, the first thing I would do, given the present situation that we find ourselves, the first thing I would do would be to remove all taxes, all duties on food items, because insecurity and other things are not helping us to produce enough food in Nigeria today. So what I would do, I would advise those in power to do, is to first remove import duties, any kind of duty on important food items. Very, very important. And I would be doing this by, or rather, together with, simultaneously with cutting down on cost of governance. The other speaker just spoke about private jets, talked about SUVs, talked about the kind of actions and the communications that we've just been grappling with in the last couple of months. I mean, it does not show that we have an emergency in our hands. The hardship is, I don't know how to say it, it's jaw-dropping. The best thing the government would do now is to declare a state of emergency, first on governance, 2 on food. On governance, as I said earlier, is to cut costs of governance. I don't think that those in power today, from the president to the minister, none of them would say they were hungry before they got to where they are today. They don't need those pecks of, they don't need those monies, if you like. They don't need those millions and billions that are being spent. My advice would be for them to show patriotism, to show commitment to reducing cost of governance by slashing whatever, if possible, by 70 to 80% of whatever allowances are attached to their offices. The National Assembly will have no business, though it will take some steps to do, more complex steps or complicated steps to do, trying to make our National Assembly unicameral. We don't need a bicameral National Assembly. It's energy and money consuming. All we need to do is to have part-time. In fact, we don't need the Senate. We can do with the lower chamber, the House of Reps, or whatever we want to call it afterwards, but then let them be on part-time. We spend a lot of money on electing those who will get to that place, spend a lot of money in keeping them in office and servicing their lifestyles. That cannot continue if we have this kind of hunger and hardship emergency as a nation. So that's the step first, before you begin to talk of any other thing. Now, again, I would not advise the government to continue on the line with the line they're towing right now, which is tax, tax, tax. Yes, government needs money, but you can imagine the kind of money that government is going to make by cutting down on cost of governance, first and foremost. I heard that a lawmaker, for example, goes home with more than 20 million every month. I think almost more than 20, close to 50 million for some in a month. And I mean, if you cut down on costs and those allowances are reduced to not more than 2 million in a month, I think we will save a lot of money. And then you make food cheap. Food cheap by removing duties on imported food items. And then you help farmers. They need credit facilities. They need, first of all, to address insecurity that will not enable them to go to farm. In the north continues to be the food basket of Nigeria. But with insecurity in the north, how do you expect food to come from there without unnecessary costs? The same for the middle, the other parts of the north. We're talking about the middle belt areas, talking about the plateau, the Benue axis, and the rest. So I think that first and foremost, cut down on governance. Secondly, remove cost of importing food items. Then encourage local production of food items by addressing insecurity and tax phenomenon that we have just seen now should not be encouraged. How do I mean? My colleague just talked about increasing the government's plan to increase VAT by as much as 2.5%, from 7.5% to 10%. Oh my God. And then you still, with the hardship we're already facing, you want to create employment. VAT is paid on every item that you have. And companies who make revenues, that they pay VAT. So you know that, of course, the more payments you make outwards, the lesser your propensity to have the capacity to even employ. And you want to get as many youths out of the unemployment market.
What should happen in the oil sector regarding the relationship between NNPC and Dangote? And I want to take you to Fad. Okay. What do you think should happen? Very quickly, because of our time is spent.
Before I answer that, I forgot to make one statement. Okay. We want to be more productive as a society, but interest rate is too high. We keep increasing interest rate to fight inflation, but inflation keeps going up. So clearly it is not working. So I think we have to look at that as well, because you want people to have cheap capital so that we can be productive as a society. But if interest rate is this high, nobody is going to, take borrow any money, which will improve the economy, and which obviously then government can tax, those sectors of the economy. And it's very unfortunate, the back and forth, I think, over the last couple of months between NNPC and
Dangote.
Yes, right? Because from a business point of view, if the richest man in Africa, somebody who has, you don't have to like him as a person, but what he has done for this country is there for all to see.
Right.
And for government, rather than to support what he does so that we can help reduce the forex pressure, right, on our economy, it's very unfortunate to see all this back and forth, and in some instances, unfortunate. Some are even saying government is trying to sabotage it because people are making money from the status quo. But I think what we've seen over the last few weeks has been very positive. I think a lot of discussion is going on, and we hope this will really help so that we depend on our own oil that we refine, we buy locally. So hopefully, and then that resources that we normally pay, we can use it in other sectors of the economy for the betterment of our country.
Everybody. All right. Thank you so much to our panelists today, Mr. Fahad Aliyu Gaba, and of course, virtually, Dr. Masen Mbamalu. Thank you for coming to Inside Sources. And there you have it. That's another edition of Inside Sources today. Like we always say, we are here because we believe that Nigeria will prevail, because we will not relent. Thank you for watching. My name is Laulu Akonde. I'll see you during the next edition.